Hello, ladies and gentlemen. In honor of N7 Day, which is November 7th, this year, 2013, I have decided to play some Unreal Tournament 2004 because that just makes complete and total sense. Not really, but who's going to complain? It's a great game, made with the same theoretical technology. I mean, it's a different version of Unreal, not the same company, not from the same country, but parallels, sci-fi, and whatever. I'm going to be playing the single-player campaign.
You as their captain. All that remains before reaching the tournament is to lead them through the team qualifying rounds. You will be facing Sunblade, Supernova, and the new Goliath team of Juggernauts, also seeking to qualify for the tournament.
I have played this game way too many times. I know this really well. I'm doing the qualification stuff and all that sort of stuff because it's where I am in the story, but today I'm going to talk about mainly about Unreal, not Unreal Tournament, but Mass Effect. And, you know, I should probably start by saying what I classify Mass Effect as is the game of this console generation. There is no game that better defines, or defines might be the right word, but there's definitely no game that I think people remember this console generation for other than is Mass Effect. I mean, there are games that were a big part of this console generation. You know, one of this company's games, Gears of War, this company being the company of the game I'm playing, Epic. Gears of War is certainly a very important game of this console generation. But to me, Mass Effect is sort of like the defining game of this console generation, mostly because it just does so much to stand out and yet sort of define standards. Doesn't seem like the right word, and yet at the same time it does. It seems like the way I'd best describe, you know, storytelling that was sort of debuted or became a part of this console generation, and animation styles and the conversation wheel, and doing so much that, you know, made Mass Effect. Mass Effect is something that was, you know, so very much so copied off of and, you know, emulated and parodied in different games. You look at Saints Row 4 had a lot of like very Mass Effect parody-esque stuff, from the isolated ship to the romance options to having Keith Davis be sort of his personified character. And, you know, it's impossible to deny that the game had controversy about it. You look at the ending and how many people were so violently opposed to how the game ended. I have my own my own thoughts about that, of course, as you would expect somebody to actually do. You don't want to have the exact same opinion as everyone else, because that's just freaking boring. Doesn't, you know, allow for any sort of variety in thought. Which, if every game was made the same, and everybody thought the same about every game, pretty sure I said this before, but it would be a very boring world because everyone would want the same thing. Everyone would try to hit the same goal. And I think it's important for developers universally to just branch out and try new things. And you know, some elements of Mass Effect weren't exactly new. They were very much so built off of Knights of the Republic or Jade Empire, which is a game I haven't heard hide nor hair from since it really stopped production back in like 2008. Was Jade Empire 2 or something. And, you know, that's just the way it is. You know, you find something that works and you stick with it. If a game just doesn't work, 9 times out of 10, the company just doesn't stick with it. Which, you know, it has its good and its bad because, oh, she died. Sometimes it's worth sticking with a kind of cruddy concept because later it ends up working out really well. I mean, the first Gears of War definitely had its issues, but later on it worked like a dream. Like, I would argue that, you know, no third-person shooter will ever be able to touch Gears of War 3. It look very differently in Judgment, but that's a very different conversation. Of course, who am I kidding? The second Epic announces a next-gen version of Gears of War or something, I'm going to be on it like a comet.
Dominating.
So when I say that, you know, Mass Effect is the game of the generation, I mean it in part because of experience of having played it and finished it so many times, from having had so many discussions about it, from having seen the cultural impact it had on gaming. Wow, I almost died there. Like the raw number of, you know, the raw fan base that was generated because of, you know, these characters that were very archetypal and yet completely different from other sci-fi archetypes is ridiculous to think about. And when you talk about like games as they evolve, Mass Effect is definitely one of the best examples of a game that changed every single time. I mean, between 2 and 3, not so much, but between 1 and 2, I mean, if it weren't for the fact that all the characters had such a, you know, distinct look to them, then you wouldn't know that Mass Effect 1 and 2 are in the same series. You don't even know they're made by the same company or running the same general technology. Definitely.
Adrenaline.
Definitely Mass Effect 2 was the game that, you know, a lot of people know the series for. They don't really know about 3 or 1, I should say, because there's probably a stupid amount of people who have never touched Mass Effect 1 and just played 2 and 3. And there's probably some people who haven't touched 3 because of how bad they, you know, perceive the game from, you know, general perception, which is unfortunate. If popular opinion was the significant was the sole way we defined a game, then, you know, some games would be doomed to failure, and some games would be, you know, held beyond all belief despite being, you know, not as good. It's kind of hard to say that because, you know, there are some games that people absolutely love, but for whatever reason, you know, people, you know, maybe don't like them or don't find them good, to use a phrase, which
Flawless victory.
It's so weird to think about looking at. I hate these sort of things. It's so weird to think that I could never perceive Mass Effect as a bad game, and not because of my reputation with it or how much I love it, but because, simply put, it doesn't do anything inherently wrong. You know, you look at the ending, but BioWare certainly admitted, you know, people didn't like it, and they, you know, amended their ending. It's still the same general ending, but at least they addressed some of the issues that people had with it. Personally, my main issue with the ending of the game was, you know, once, I guess because of when and where this is, how this is, and how this is being recorded, I should, you know, say spoilers. You know, people were sort of put off with how the game ended because initially it was, you know, either you control the Reapers, you destroy the Reapers, or you fuse the Reapers, and there didn't seem to be much variance there because, I think not because the endings weren't drastically different as people would like them to be, but I think it was more that the game, you know, at its core, Mass Effect is a game of choice, right? I mean, that's the thing. It's, you know, you choose whether this character lives or dies, etc., etc., etc. And there was a lot of that in Mass Effect 3. I can't remember the official count, but you can choose the fate of, I think, 7 different races, even going with the Reapers, you know, even going with the Reapers' destruction, or not going with destruction of the Reapers. You can account for the destruction of, or the complete annihilation, like extinction, like complete and total, never to be seen in the face of the galaxy again, like 7 different species, I think. And that's all on you. You know, the game doesn't decide that for you. They aren't exactly predetermined in the sense of, you know, this is going to happen no matter what. This is, okay, who do you want do you want the Quarians or the Geth? Do you want the Krogan on your side? Do you want the Solarians on your side? Now, granted, you know, with the Solarian Krogan thing, it's just, the theoretical extinction of the Krogan. I mean, the Genophage is still the Genophage, but it's entirely possible that in fighting the Reapers or ensuing years after the Reapers, that the Krogan would just not have enough fertile males and females to, breed people, which isn't good. And so that is, I think, where a lot of the choice in Mass Effect came from, was, people. Not just people, but civilizations. Entire thousands of years, longer than, Earth has been part of, before Earth had electricity, some of these races existed, and you could basically go, okay, and now you don't exist anymore. Sorry. Which is kind of crazy to think about, and sometimes people get lost in the controversy that they don't discuss the lighter notes, or not the lighter notes, but more the bigger fact of, you're deciding the fate of the galaxy. Not like, games don't do that before, but, I mean, personally in Mass Effect, I always felt like I had more of a choice than just, oh, this is what your job is. I mean, at least in Mass Effect, you got to choose which one survived, right? And, talking about the ending... excuse me. Talking about the ending, could you think of a way to end the Mass Effect series? Seriously, do you think that BioWare could come up with a really effective way to end the series that would keep everyone happy? I don't think that any company, no matter the size, no matter the budget, no matter the reputation. I mean, Christ, you think about how much pressure Valve must be feeling right now. With the hardware launch and all that. But, BioWare had to end one of the, like I said, one of the most memorable franchises this entire generation. They had to account for all those choices. They had to think of everything. And, all things considered, they did a really damn good job, in my opinion. Who am I to say? I'm just a guy who loves the games. For a lot of people, Citadel was the official ending to Mass Effect 3. Like, from there, they stop at Citadel, and that's it. They don't even finish the game, which is kind of hard for me to believe. I finish the games I play, damn it. So, that's... it's always tough when you talk about a game that has such a loving fan base that you are part of, and yet you disagree so wholeheartedly with so much about the game. Like, I am fully in belief that the original ending to Mass Effect was, totally fine. Well, I probably shouldn't say totally fine. I think it was not as shit as some people make it out to be, like, where it's, worse than Satan himself. But... asshole stole my fucking shield pack. Precious bunny hop there. But it's impossible to deny that on the way there, it was one of the best journeys of 2012. And that's including Journey, which I haven't played Journey. And I know that people are holding it to high heaven. And, it's kind of hard to play a game out of a console that can run it on, so it's kind of hard for me to judge it lengthwise or widthwise, but the way people reacted to it, it certainly seems like a game that people love. So, I won't deny that. If somebody likes a game a lot to the point where they're, saying that they cried at the end of it, and they don't seem like the person that would cry at the end of a game like Journey, or that they'd even like a game like Journey, which is kind of weird, because, some people who absolutely love Journey don't seem the type of people that would like a game like Journey whatsoever. Son of a bitch!
Rampage. Adrenaline. Double kill. Booster.
Ah, crap. I'm so dead. I'm so dead. And it's always worth discussing these sort of things. Because as we go into a new generation of consoles with new franchises starting up, this is the sort of stuff that's going to happen. We're going to have people discussing, parallels in between different games and talking about, what this game did right and what this game did wrong, etc., etc., etc. Oh, wow.
Dominating.
And I can't help but feel like, in the end, Mass Effect is like I said, a game that will define this generation for years to come. People will look back on the 7th generation of consoles and go, Mass Effect was those games. Was the series that everyone could play, that anyone could enjoy, but had enough going for it to keep it, feeling unique and feeling like, a universe. And that's the thing I hope they expand on this generation, BioWare and I suppose EA in general. I mean, I'd like to see what happens when... asshole. I'd like to see what happens if BioWare to sort of license out Mass Effect as a franchise. It's sort of like how, Star Wars is a franchise, not just, a series of movies or a series of games or whatever, but it's a franchise that people create all sorts of different works in. Books, obviously, but there's loads of games. Star Wars games have been a part of people's childhood for years. I personally love the Star Wars Battlefront, so I can't wait to see what DICE does with it. And considering DICE's reputation, having seen a lot of Battlefield 4, I'm not unconfident for it, but I want to see where it goes, because there were some things that really kept Star Wars Battlefront unique from Battlefield, which is a mod it was based on. So going from there, and talking about Mass Effect as a franchise, I'd like to see games based on factions, or more specifically, groups. And so a little bit of backstory to this. In Mass Effect 3, you had different groups you would bring in that you'd find from scanning planets or doing missions or whatever. Finding somebody's husband that's been buried in a Rachni hive or something. And you got war assets. And there were some really cool assets that I'd like to see expanded on. In particular, the Void Devils, which was a Vorcha fighter wing. It was the Vorcha, who were little, kind of like rat-looking dudes who were, all skinny and bony and stuff. It was Alliance Turian cross-trained fighter pilots of those guys. And so I'd love to see what would happen if they were to make, a space combat game. And then there was Arlac Company, who Grunt, assuming he survived Mass Effect 2, was a part of, and was the leader of, actually. And, I'd like to see a game based on that. Because, that just seems cool. If they were to completely change the gameplay of Mass Effect from a third-person card-based shooter to, like, a first-person melee, shotgunning hybrid, basically sort of like, maybe like Painkiller, or a game of that nature, I think that would be awesome as a game. And of course they have, like Turian Blackwatch, which is a Spec Ops group. And then, even as a strategy game potentially with like ship battles. And that's just the tip of the iceberg, because like I said, it's a universe, and a universe deserves to be expanded on. And Mass Effect 4 is being worked on. We've seen, talking about first drafts and everything like that. And if you looked at, I think Casey Hudson tweeted a picture of the Mass Effect 4 binder, which was, bigger than, some books I've read. Now, granted, I don't read, I haven't read War and Peace per se, but, it's definitely a big book of Mass Effect. And so the question is, what are they going to do with, next-gen tech? Where do they go from there? Because, I love Mass Effect, but if they did just a, carbon copy of, high resolution textures and maybe some, next-gen feature-esque sort of stuff, but just made a new Mass Effect game, I'd play it, I'd enjoy it because it's Mass Effect, assuming it's any good, but I wouldn't like it as much as if they did something new. I mean, when they added in multiplayer to Mass Effect, that was really new. And in some cases, it was what I spent a lot of my time doing in Mass Effect 3, honestly. I spent so much time playing the Mass Effect 3 multiplayer. It's painful. And at its core, it's because... And the reason why they were able to do it so well is because it wasn't you know, the team, the main development team, the BioWare Toronto, or I can't remember the difference of the BioWare studios, other than the BioWare Austin versus BioWare's in Canada. But it wasn't, you know, it wasn't the main studio. It was another studio who started making a first-person shooter. And then they just sort of translated the core gameplay and gameplay ideals and that sort of stuff over to Mass Effect 3, which is why it felt so, you know, well-defined. It had a lot of you know, similar game aspects. Of course, it was going from first-person to third-person is a big jump. But otherwise, a lot of the stuff felt solid, and the core gameplay, which is based on Mass Effect 3's gameplay, which was really good compared to, especially Mass Effect 1, but Mass Effect 2, it did a lot. It did a lot that I really liked. It brought back, you know, more than 4 weapons per, you know, weapon class, even if you purchase them. I mean, there were like, what, 2 pistols in the entirety of Mass Effect 2? Versus, I think there's 11 in Mass Effect 3? 11 or 13 or something? Some stupidly high amount. Like a bitch. So it was, you know, it was cool to see this. I really enjoyed it, and the fact that they continue to add content to it was a big thing. I mean, what has made not Unreal Tournament, but what made Team Fortress 2 so popular was that it just kept getting stuff for players to mess with. And if you don't do that with your game, if you don't provide more stuff, unless it's a ridiculously solid initial basis, you know, like the maps and the core gameplay and what you have inside are, you know, really good. Which the core stuff in Mass Effect 3 was, in my opinion, very good. But adding more to it, adding free weapons, adding free maps, adding new characters, and you know, really experimenting with what you could do with the Mass Effect characters and races. I mean, for Christ's sake, they let you play as a Geth Juggernaut, which is something we've only ever fought before, and in some cases been allied with. But being able to play as that unstoppable behemoth was so weird and so fun, and it just completely changed how gameplay worked. And that was just going from one type of soldier to another type of soldier. That doesn't include going from one sort of Vanguard to a Sentinel to a Biotic, and including stuff like the Collectors as, you know, enemies to play, and then or people to play, playing as the Collectors. You know, if you had told me that, okay, Mass Effect 3, you're gonna play as the Collectors during a multiplayer mode, I would go, huh? But but playing as the Collectors felt so good, which is weird because the Collector you played as, at least one of them, I don't know if there's, I can't remember if there's more or not, but he had this like death ball that you could just send out and set up for explosions. And it was just, all of it was just smart game design put together in a game with really good control methods combined with a really interesting and rich universe that was expanded on in multiplayer, which is really weird to think about. You don't normally expand on a universe in multiplayer, but I mean, for a BioWare game, hell, it works, right? Now, I'm gonna link off of from multiplayer into. I'm gonna link off multiplayer into. He's dead. I'm gonna leave multiplayer into the weapons. Now, in Mass Effect 1, every single weapon was basically the same. I mean, there were, you know, mechanical differences, and there were, you know, some slight aesthetic differences, and the N7 weapons were notably different, or the Spectre weapons, I should say. But otherwise, it was all the same stuff. Beyond a shadow of doubt, there's basically all the exact same malarkey. So when Mass Effect 2 came around, they instead picked a couple of like the sort of the standout weapons: the Avenger, the Predator, the Avenger, the Predator, Mantis, Locust, you know, giving each weapon its own, you know, consistent, you know, narrative theme and visual theme, all that sort of stuff. And removed a lot of weapon customization, and the game pretty much transferred from like a really action RPG with a really heavy focus on the RPG side to a, you know, to an action game with, you know, RPG elements. They really toned down how unlocking skills worked. I mean, you know, there were RPG things in the sense of like, you know, this time only, you know, get it now or never get it again. There's a lot of that, but, and you know, character choice and character definition, all that sort of stuff that, you know, you need in RPGs, and expanding the roster, especially with, you know, over a dozen squad mates at the end. But otherwise, they had a really limited weapon palette. I mean, if you chose assault rifle as your weapon skill, shit, that was stupid. You either had the Avenger or shoot, what was the other one? I can't remember it. I didn't like it that much. It was the burst rifle. Turn around, bitch. You know, that was it. Or the Revenant, if you so chose during the Geth or the Collector Cruiser. But otherwise, you know, that's it. You know, and the pistols and everything else was even less. You had to buy, you know, $2 weapon packs to get expansions. So when Mass Effect 3 comes along, the game has, you know, like, I think it was 9 assault rifles at launch. 9 assault rifles that are completely different from each other. You know, there's a burst one. There's like, you know, an automatic one and a different automatic one that performs something differently. There was like a heavy, like a heavy sort of carbine. There was of course the Revenant, which was, you know, my personal favorite until I got my hands on the Typhoon a couple months into the game's lifespan, maybe half a year or so. And that was just so interesting. It was so refreshingly different. And then they brought back weapon modifications. So, you know, you had expanded clips, or you added the bayonet, or you added accuracy or recoil dampening, or, you know, whatever floats your freaking boat. I forgot how big this map is. It's not great for 1v1s versus AI, at least. Oh, you're dead. So am I. And it was just good to see BioWare, you know, going other way, making sure that let's bring it back to those RPG origins. You know, seeing the expanded skills and seeing just how different you could build your character if you chose to, you know, travel up one path or travel up another. You know, that was stupid. You know, you could build. God, I am so. This keyboard is so sensitive. You could build up to, you know, focus on, you know, cooldowns, or build up to focus on damage, or do a balance, or, you know, work on X or Y or Z, and that was just so different from the Mass Effect. Oh god, I hate not having double jump. I'm playing too much Scout. And it, like, just felt good to know that I had more choice, and, you know, ultimately the game's Mass Effects have been a game of choice. It's, you know, who lives and who dies, etc., etc., etc. And, you know, if you want to look at, like, for example, all the different, you know, content packs that were available, she got double damage. That's not good. But you look at the first one was Leviathan. I mean, you can be technical. The first one was From Ashes, but, you know, it only matters if you didn't pre-order or whatever it is. You know, all that Bolshevik, which is really annoying to deal with, because I feel completely different than everyone else. As I've said before, I feel like that's sort of my job, is to feel differently than everyone else. Oh, she's trapped down there. Yep. And, you know, From Ashes was really short, and you can tell that was definitely cut for, you know, maybe a quick buck, or maybe it wasn't. I mean, you know, people say it was, people say it wasn't. I don't really care. Javik as a character, you know, it was, you know, we've heard so much about Protheans, and then we get to actually speak to one, and he's just so different from, I think, what we had perceived them to be. You know, he was an alien. Okay, well, we're used to aliens by now. What is it? What's his alien that? What about him makes him stand out from the Krogans or the Solarians or the Asari or the Turians or the Vorcha or the Drell or the Yogg? You know, what is it that makes him cool? Why should we care that the Protheans were wiped out, other than that they were, you know, part of this, you know, technological leap? Christ almighty, bitch. But as we found out, you know, throughout the course of the game, the Protheans don't matter worth a rat's ass. They're just another step in the cycle. You know, and you know, everything builds up from each other, and you know, this cycle is the cycle that's going to be doing it. So, you know, feel about it how you will, about maybe being cut content, maybe it isn't. I mean, it's just another character in the end, and it's not like you miss that much. He certainly has more dialogue than Kasumi or than Kasumi or Zaid. Rest in peace, Robin Sachs. But you know, he doesn't feel as main of a character as, you know, Garrus or Tali. But then again, neither does James. But it's mostly because he was the first game introduced, and you know, they expanded on James from there, from Mass Effect 3, you know, like a movie, I think. And so moving on from there, you look at Leviathan, right? Leviathan, sort of like, you can tell Leviathan had a lot of stuff that was in it to so BioWare is like thumbing and nosing the notion of a lot of the stuff that people had assumed or people had created or had, you know, people have been bitching about, and they just sort of went, okay, here you go, in canon, this is something that happened. And it's weird how, you know, when they make canon stuff, you know, when stuff that's canon costs money, it's sort of really weird to think about, but you kind of got to get over that sometimes and just, you know, bite the bullet. You know, when you know, Game of the Year edition or whatever it is comes out, that'll be that. So going from there, don't get the hell back. Yes.
Adrenaline.
Pick it up. So I really enjoy Leviathan for being like, you know, half murder mystery, half huge just dump of, oh, so by the way, this is the original Reaper, or the race that built the Reapers, or the race that created the AI that created the Reapers, because that's one hell of a, you know, line with, you know, pins and strings and pictures of, you know, faces. So there it is. And, you know, it was cool to see them expand the mech concept by giving that underwater mech, and then just having you alone talking to the Leviathan, the aforementioned Leviathan. And of course they gave War the resources on stuff, and they actually introduced one of my favorite guns in the game, the Bloodpack Punisher, which is this submachine gun that that it fires regular rounds, but every, I think it was 8th round or so, or 7th round, fires an explosive shot of armor-piercing ammo, which it just feels great. Go pow, pow, pow. That just felt awesome. So Leviathan is definitely, I would say, inhumanly important to the lore of Mass Effect in the long run. And then you look at Omega, which was the content pack where you go with Aria to take back Omega, from Cerberus. Which, lore-wise, isn't that important. I mean, it's severely hinted that it's going to happen at some point in the game. But if you do Aria's quests, then you find this out. It's heavily hinted that it's going to happen. And, you know, going about doing it, you see the first female Turian ever in the game, which is cool. To see, you know, how Nyreen looked. And as a story, being that it is, you know, Aria, which is such an interesting character in the first place, it was you know, fun to do. Is it as essential as maybe Leviathan? No, but is it great? Oh yes. But then of course you have Citadel. the infamous Citadel, the infamous fan service pack. And can I blame BioWare? No. In fact, I would be kind of sad if they didn't exploit the fact that they have such a fan base that loves the characters and the relationships that they have with each other, the relationships that they've created with those characters. That creating a pack that is what is essentially the Expendables, in a sense that it's just it's everything that made Mass Effect great. It was the characters, it was the environments that you get to walk through, and it was put on this location that has changed so much, and it's the pinnacle in Mass Effect. I mean, if you've completed the game, then you know that the Citadel is the thing. It's what is in part of the grand plan of the entire galaxy. And yes, and looking at what Citadel did and the characters it introduced, Maya Brooks, and then your clone, which that was when I first played Citadel, I was playing through it with my female shepherd, who had bright pink hair, and the shady figure that is sort of like taunting you, or is like sort of the big bad throughout the entire add-on, which is your clone. I could see its pink hair, so I was like, well, that's a clone, which you would have thought that would have been tested out, but nobody's perfect, right? And Citadel was fan service. I mean, plain and simple, it was meant for the fans of the game who love the characters and shipping and all that sort of crap. It was all there to make sure that they enjoyed their time and made sure that they got their fill. And it was, an apology in a sense, because it was, yes, we know that we screwed up so much of what you hold so sacred. So here's our apology. You get to go dancing with Garrus and experience the awkward shepherd shuffle and all that sort of stuff, and we're doing it unabashedly for you. You get to hold a party where you get to see Tali drunk again, because Tali being drunk on the Normandy was was so funny to me in Mass Effect 3. Watching the emergency induction port and all that sort of stuff was just so great and so character defining, and such a great part of what makes Mass Effect Mass Effect. Mass Effect is, to me, the game that stayed true to itself the entire way through its lifespan. It knows what its fans like, and it knows what makes Mass Effect, so let's make sure to do that to the best of our abilities. Someone's got redeemed. I hit R to reload. You cannot take the first-person shooter out of the first-person shooter and just expect me to not. So Citadel is definitely something that, especially if you have the full cast of characters, if you have everyone, if you have all of the folks from Mass Effect 2, if you have all the Mass Effect 3 folks, if you have, if everyone's alive, with the exception of a couple different characters who will die no matter what you do. And even if one of them doesn't die, he still doesn't show up because he's hiding. I mean, I said I've already spoiled like the entirety of the game, so I might as well go into details. So the death of Legion is inevitable. Legion's going to die, no matter what you do, no matter what you choose, no matter which whether you choose to save the Quarians or you choose to save the Geth, Legion dies. Period. And Thane dies no matter what you do. No matter how well prepared you are, Thane still bites the bullet, which is unfortunate. I know a lot of people were really pissed off about that because, Thane was their romance, and as a result, it doesn't get to finish, which sucks. It's very possible for a lot of people who need a romance to die with very little with, you know, one minute mistake, which is very RPG-ish. So, you know, get used to it. And then Mordin, for a lot of people, dies. It's possible for Mordin to survive if you convince him to not work on the genophage anymore, or the cure to the genophage. But at that point, Rex will die, well, he's already dead. And you know, then you don't see Mordin ever again, because he's still, you know, he just goes into hiding to work on the Crucible. So there's going to be 3 characters that will never show up. However, if you remember that data pad that Mordin leaves you, breaking the #1 rule of Omega in more ways than one. Easily one of my favorite lines in the entire series. I mean, Mordin in general is a great character, but it's gonna do it flawlessly, ass waffle. But Mordin as a character, man, just gets so many defining traits from the first Mass Effect, and it just gets expanded on so much in Mass Effect 2. But unfortunately, it's kind of cut short, which is unfortunate. And people say you can't kill with that thing. I beg to differ. Well, if you're fighting AI, yeah. And you know, every other character, you know, except for like, assuming they haven't died before, is going to show up, and a lot of people don't really die on the way there. With the exception of Jack, she can die on the way there if you, assuming you do it at the very end. Assuming you do it at the very end of the game, like after everything else is done. Jack can bite it on the way there. Miranda can bite it on the way there. I'm gonna guess that Jacob probably can. Liara is like the only character in the entire game that I don't think can die. Which is to say that she's like sort of the crux character of the series is, you know, not incorrect. She's definitely very important to the entirety of the series, like in Mass Effect 2 and all the stuff that she does. And it makes sense. So when I talk about like this death carrying over and stuff, this is something that I'd like to see more games do in the next gen. I'd like to see games that, you know, ascend past a single game and go multi-game and really carry it over. And you know, that's the defining aspect of Mass Effect. It is the game that your save matters in. And every single save and every single iteration of your save can change what happens. So, thank you for joining me as I played Sunrise Tournament 2004, and I talked about Mass Effect here on N7 Day. This was recorded live on Twitch, so if you want to catch me streaming more stuff, please go check it out. There'll be a link in the description. Otherwise, you know, I'm glad that Mass Effect is a series that I can probably say define this generation, because I don't think there'd be any other game that I could say that everyone could experience and everyone can enjoy. And I'm just glad that, you know, it had a great run, and I can't wait to see what BioWare is bringing in the next version of Mass Effect. But, you know, in the words of Commander Shepard, I should go.